this video we are going to see about stereochemistry. Before entering into the subject, we should know about plane polarized light, and this is the thing which is used to produce plane polarized light. It is called as nickel prism. Nickel prism is made up of calcite. CaCO3 is the chemical formula of calcite. Two fine cut nickel prisms will be stuck together with an adhesive called Canada balsam. So two calcite prisms will be stuck together with an adhesive called Canada balsam. Nickel prism transmits waves vibrating in only one direction. So usually ordinary light particles will be vibrating in all directions. When it passes through nickel prism, it will transfer the waves vibrating in only one direction. Due to this behavior, nickel prism is called as polarizer. The light particle which is vibrating in only one direction is called as plane polarized light. Let's see with an example. So usually we are drawing sun like this only to denote the light particles are vibrating in all direction. So this is how we are drawing sun. So it indicates the light particles are vibrating in all directions. So if it is the light particle, it will be vibrating in all directions. This is how it will be vibrating. When it passes through nickel prism, if the ordinary light passes through the nickel prism, then the nickel prism will allow the light particles which are vibrating in only one direction. So the particle which is vibrating in only one direction is called as plane polarized light. So this is plane polarized light and this is ordinary light. Ordinary light passes through the nickel prism. So this is how plane polarized light is produced. Due to this behavior, nickel prism is called as polarizer. If the plane polarized light passes through a chemical compound, then we may get two types of results. If it passes through a chemical compound, then we may get two types of results. They are: the plane polarized light may be rotated or may not be rotated. The plane polarized light may be rotated or may not be rotated based on the nature of the chemical compound. If the plane polarized light is rotated, then the sample is called as optically active compound. Optically active. If the plane polarized light is not rotated, then that compound is called as optically inactive compound. If it is not rotated, then that compound is called as optically inactive compound. So in stereochemistry, we will study about optically active compounds. So this is the difference between optically active and optically inactive compounds. Next we are going to see about polarimeter. Polarimeter is an instrument which is used to check whether the sample is optically active or inactive. So it's an instrument which is used to check whether the sample is optically active or inactive. Usually in chemical factories, they will check the optical activity of samples using polarimeter. So now we are going to see how polarimeter is working. So this is the ordinary light which is vibrating in all directions. When it passes through a nickel prism, then we will get plane polarized light, that means the light will be vibrating in only one direction. So after passing through the nickel prism, we will get plane polarized light. So the plane polarized will pass through a sample tube. Inside the tube our chemical compound which is going to be analyzed will be filled inside the tube. The plane polarized light will pass through the sample tube which is containing the compound. After passing, we will get results. So based on the results, we can come to know whether the sample is optically active or inactive. So this is ordinary light and this is nickel prism, which is called as polarizer. This is plane polarized light because the light particle is vibrating in only one direction. Next, this is the sample container, sample tube. After that, we are getting the results. Now we are going to see how the results may come. So three types of results may come. Let's see one by one. First, if the sample did not rotate the plane polarized light, or else we can say that there is no change in the plane polarized light. There is no change in the plane polarized light. Then, as I told you already, that sample is called as optically inactive compound. The sample is optically inactive. If the plane polarized light is rotated, then there are two possibilities. Either it can be rotated in clockwise or it can be rotated in anti-clockwise. Let's see first, if the sample is rotated in clockwise, then the sample, this will be the original angle of the plane polarized light. If it is rotated in the clockwise, then the angle, this is theta and this is called rotation angle. Okay, then the sample is called as dextro-rotatory sample. Dextro-rotatory. It will be denoted by small d. So dextro-rotatory in the sense the sample will be rotated the plane polarized light in clockwise. If the sample rotates the plane polarized light in anti-clockwise, so this is clockwise and this is anti-clockwise. If this is the original line of the plane polarized light, then the light is rotated in the anti-clockwise. Here the angle is called as theta, that is rotated angle. If the sample rotated the plane polarized light in anti-clockwise, then the sample is called as levorotatory. Usually it is denoted by small l. So in polarimeter, initially the ordinary light passes through the nickel prism. After that we will get plane polarized light. The plane polarized light will pass through the sample tube. We may get three types of result. If there is no change, then the sample is called as optically inactive. If the PPL is rotated in clockwise, it is dextro-rotatory. If it is rotated in anti-clockwise, then it is called as levorotatory. I hope you have understood. Next, we are going to see how to calculate the specific rotation using polarimeter. Specific rotation is denoted by the symbol alpha. So alpha is equal to theta divided by L into C. I told you already what is the meaning of theta. Theta is nothing but angle of rotation or rotated angle. So here the theta, I told you already, this is how we need to calculate theta. Next, L. The sample container or the sample tube length is called as L. Length of the sample tube is called as L. Next, C. What is C? Concentration of the sample. So the sample will be taken in a particular concentration. That concentration is denoted by C. So alpha is equal to theta divided by L into C. Using this formula, we can find out whether the sample is D or L in nature. Next, we are going to see how to find out the given sample is optically active or inactive. So first method, we can find out by polarimeter. If I don't have polarimeter, then how can I find out whether the given sample is optically active or inactive? By seeing the structural formula. That method is called chirality. So chirality is nothing but if a carbon is attached with 4 different groups, then that behavior is called as chirality. So carbon can be made maximum 4 bonds to attain the octet state. If it is attached with the hydrogen, here ethyl group, for example OH group, here chlorine group. Okay, so here this carbon is attached with 4 different groups. It is attached with 4 different groups. Then that carbon is called as chiral carbon. Then this carbon is called as chiral carbon, and this behavior is called as chirality. This behavior, if the carbon is attached with 4 different groups, then that carbon is called chiral carbon, then this behavior is chirality. If a carbon is attached with 4 different groups, then definitely that compound will be optically active compound. So by chirality also we can find out whether the sample is optically active or inactive. Next, we are going to see about stereochemistry. Stereochemistry is nothing but it is the chemistry, it is the subdivision of chemistry which is used to study the 3D arrangement of atoms or molecules. So what is 3D? 3-dimensional is simply denoted as 3D. So 3-dimensional in the sense we will look at the molecules in x-axis, y-axis as well as in z-axis. So usually in 2D we will look at the molecules or atoms only in x and y-axis, but in 3D-dimensional we will study the structure of atoms or molecules in 3-dimensional. So this is the difference between 2D and 3D. Next, we are going to see an important topic, that is isomers. Isomers are the compounds having same molecular formula. Same molecular formula. There are 2 types of isomers. They are structural isomers and the next one is stereoisomers. So there are 2 types of isomers. They are structural isomers and the next one is stereoisomers. So structural isomers are nothing but they have same molecular formula but they have different structural formula. So they have different structural formula. Let's see with an example. First, I am going to write 1-bromopropane. This is the structural formula of 1-bromopropane. The name of this compound is 1-bromopropane. Next, I am going to write 2-bromopropane. CH. So name of this compound is 2-bromopropane. Now we are going to find out the molecular formula of both of these compounds. So in the first compound, what are the elements are there? Carbon, hydrogen and bromine. As well as in the second compound also, carbon, hydrogen and bromine are the elements represented in these two compounds. So how many carbons? 3 carbons. How many hydrogens? 7 hydrogens. Bromine only 1. Here also 3 carbons, 7 hydrogens. 3, 4, 7. And how many bromine? Only 1. So now the molecular formula for both of these are same, but structural formula is not same. So that's why they are called as structural isomers. Structural isomers are compounds having same molecular formula but different structural formula. That's why they are called as structural isomers. Next we are going to see about stereoisomers. Stereoisomers are the compounds have same molecular formula but different spatial arrangements. Let's see with an example. Now I am going to write two compounds. First compound is 1,3-dimethyl cyclohexane. This is 1,3-dimethyl cyclohexane. Next I am going to write the same 1,3-dimethyl cyclohexane only. This is also 1,3-dimethyl cyclohexane. So stereoisomers are the compounds have same molecular formula but different spatial arrangements. This compound can be written as simply like this: CH3, CH3. Then what is the difference between that orange color structure and those blue color structures? So in blue color structures, I used to write with this symbol. The name of this line is called wedged line. And this is called dotted line. If any group is denoted with wedged line, then it refers the group is towards us. In 3D arrangement, the group is towards us. If it is denoted in dotted line, then the group is towards the opposite side. Okay, just look at this. Okay, just consider these caps. If it is denoted with the wedged line, then it is towards us. If it is denoted with dotted lines, then the group is towards the opposite side. That's why we are using those two lines. So stereoisomers have different spatial arrangements like this. So these two groups are towards us. Here one group is towards us and the another one is towards the opposite side. These are the difference between those two compounds and they are called as stereoisomers. Next, there are two types of stereoisomers. They are configurational isomers and the next one is conformational isomers. Conformational. First, we are going to see about configurational isomers. Configurational isomers are the compounds have same molecular formula but different bonding patterns. And there are two types of configurational isomers. They are enantiomers and diastereomers. There are two types of stereoisomers, enantiomers, and the next one is diastereomers. Next, conformational isomers. Conformational isomers have same molecular formula. Conformational isomers have same molecular formula. Isomers can be interconverted by rotations. Isomers can be interconverted only by rotations. Conformational isomers also divided into two types. They are staggered and eclipsed. Staggered, and the next type is eclipsed. Let's see one by one. First, we are going to see about enantiomers. Enantiomers are the compounds have chiral carbons. So as I told you already, chiral carbons in the sense the carbon will be bonded with 4 different groups. Next, they are mirror images which are non-superimposable with each other. They are mirror images which are non-superimposable with each other. Let's see with an example. First, look at this compound. Here the carbon is bonded with 4 different groups due to it is a chiral carbon. It is bonded with 4 different groups. COOH, hydrogen, methyl group, and here OH group. The name of this compound is lattice acid. Name of this compound is lattice acid. It is optically active compound. If I keep a mirror here, because they are mirror images, so if I keep a mirror, then we will get an image like this. The carbon is bonded with 4 different groups. So in the upper side, COOH. In the lower side, OH group. Left hand side, hydrogen. And right hand side, methyl group we will get, because it is an image, mirror image. That's why. If I keep the original image with the mirror image, then what will occur? The upper side COOH group will come, lower side OH group will come. But in the right hand side, left hand side CH3 group will come, and in the right hand side hydrogen will come. So upper and lower sides will be superimposable. Then what about the right and left hand side? They are non-superimposable. So these mirror images are called as enantiomers. Next, we are going to see about diastereomers. So diastereomers are not mirror images, as well as they are non-superimposable with each other. Non-superimposable with each other. Okay, let's see with an example. First, I am going to write a compound. CH3 hydrogen. What is the name of this compound? It is butene or 2-butene. Just look at this compound also. What is the name of this compound? This is also butene only or 2-butene only. If I keep a mirror in between these two compounds, are these mirror images of each other? Right hand side, okay, we will get the exact mirror image. Then what about the left hand side? No, they are not the mirror images of each other. If I keep the sample on the other one, so in the left hand side they will be superimposed. Here CH3 will come, here hydrogen will come, but here hydrogen will come, here CH3 will come. So in the left hand side they will be superimposed, but in the right hand side they are not superimposed with each other. That's why they are called as diastereomers. Diastereomers are not mirror images of each other, as well as they are non-superimposable. So in the first compound, the bulky groups are in the same side, here are in the different side. So the first compound is called as cis-2-butene. This one is trans-2-butene. So these two compounds are the examples for diastereomers. From this example, what we come to know is diastereomers are not mirror images, as well as they are non-superimposable with each other. Next, we are going to see about the two types of conformational isomers. For example, if I write a compound like this, what is the name of this compound? It is 2,3-dibromobutane, because the compound has 4 carbons. It is called as 2,3-dibromo, and I have written in 2D structure. So in 3-dimensional, how it will be? So in 3-dimensional, we can imagine this is the 3-dimensional structure of this compound. In 3-dimensional, CH3 groups will go down, and this side hydrogens, and this side bromines. So this is the 3-dimensional structure of this compound. But actually in 3D, this compound will be looking like this only. And these are the 2 middle carbons which are bonded with hydrogens, methyl groups, and bromines like this. So in 3-dimensional, this compound will be looking like this only. If we look at from this carbon, from the front carbon, then how it will be looking like? So see the 3 groups and the front carbon. We cannot see this bond while looking from this carbon. So we are drawing a circle to denote these 3 groups are in the rear carbon. So for the first middle carbon, hydrogen, bromine, CH3. So these 3 groups are in the front carbon. Next to the rear carbon, same hydrogen, bromine, CH3. So this is how it will be looking like while we are seeing from the front carbon. And these groups are straight line to each other. So this type of isomers are called as eclipsed form isomers. Eclipsed in the sense, the groups will be in the straight line to each other. In 3-dimensional, the compound will be looking like this only. See, all the groups are in straight line to each other, as well as this bond is invisible while we looking from this. So this type of enantiomers are called as eclipsed form enantiomers. Next we are going to see about staggered form isomers. So here the front carbon is unchanged, so the groups also unchanged. But in the rear carbon, if the rear carbon is rotated 180 degree in anti-clockwise, then we will get a form like this. So CH3 will go upward and the remaining groups also change their positions. If we see from the front carbon, then how it will be looking like? Then the front carbon will not be changed. So here hydrogen, bromine, CH3. To indicate it is in the rear position, we are drawing a circle, but it will be looking like this. CH3 will go upward, here bromine, and here hydrogen. Here the compounds the groups are in the straight line, so this type of isomers are called as staggered form conformational isomers because the groups are not in the straight line. So in 3-dimensional it will be looking like this. See, the front groups are unchanged their positions, but in the rear the groups are changed. So here also we cannot see the bond between those two carbons and the groups are not in the straight line. So these are the two types of conformational isomers which can be interconverted only by rotations like this. That's why they are called as conformational isomers. Thank you for watching this video. We'll see you in the next video. Thank you.